Okay, next one. So, memorandum of understanding scheme between government and public enterprises has the forced public undertaking to improve the overall performance. So what are the MOU? What do you understand by this? Actually, for public enterprises, forced public undertaking to improve the performance. How it's important. So the era of globalization has facilitated the process of coming closer government and public enterprises. It has brought about certain changes in the functioning of the public undertaking and the ongoing era of globalization, new public management and entrepreneurship government enable public and private sector to come closer. Memorandum of understanding regime has enabled an improvement in performance of public undertaking. Now public undertaking enjoy more autonomy and functioning. They are given more freedom, financial personal administration, and this had led to more flexibility approach which has resulted in better efficiency and effectiveness. And now the public undertaking go for more specialization through use of latest available technology, skill development training, employment, better planning, and their expenditure revenue generation. The more exposure they had getting at international level is also making them more competitive and professional in their working. MOU is an agreement between the government and the public enterprises management to grant autonomy to the latter, that is to reduce day-to-day interference in the ministry in management of the public enterprises. It defines obligation of both the party for improving the performance of public enterprises. It makes the public enterprises management responsible, accountable, and thus it system annual performance contract between the ministry and the enterprises. And it was recommended by the Arjun Sen Gupta committee review the policy for public enterprises, and the MOU regime has been able to break the bottlenecks of the bad performance of public undertaking. Next is the blame for the poor public sector performance can be laid on the way of bureaucracy is structured. So our bureaucratic setup has still not been able to come out the colonial hangover. This also reflects itself in poor performance of public sector. As public enterprises are invested from public funds, therefore they should be accountable to the people. As it cannot be accountable to the people directly, it should be accountable to the parliament, which represent people in democracy. Again, in order to achieve the growth, it is necessary that public enterprises should be profitable. And there is conflicting claims between the commercial profitability and social profitability. Commercial profitability is easier to judge in terms of percentage return the capital invested. Accepted method of management. This is not so with social profitability. Thus, clear and well-defined goals are not available. Okay, so it is assumed that there should not be held accountable to each and every action, but only for the achievement of objectives set out for them in the use of their proactive resources. Expected to operate with efficiency of private enterprises, but with the higher accountability, the legislation audit often concern themselves with individual decision, and this infringe with the autonomy of public enterprises. Again, in order to public and ministry are responsible to the parliament for the performance of public enterprises, the concerned ministry have to keep a close watch on the working of the public enterprises. And the traditional Indian administration setup revolve the bureaucracy, and the machinery is fully responsible for the policy formulation, implementation, monitoring, review, evaluation, and all the physical and intellectual resources disposal of bureaucracy. But our bureaucratic system suffer from age-old practice. For example, rigid hierarchical setup, top-bottom communication, obeisance rule, excessive secrecy, red tapeism, all this being responsible for evil like corruption, untouchability, closed system. In fact, these things have been root cause of bad performance of our public sector, and the situation is so vulnerable. Who have to compete with the specialized private undertaking are usually made by the official from IAS. Now, the act like RTI given a new hope for changing the situation for the betterment of the performance of the public sector. Now, the next one is what? Next one is about it is correct to the state that one major reason for failure of many public sector undertaking was due to departure from original concept of autonomy. So autonomy is not given. So autonomy of a public enterprises imply the freedom of action in day-to-day operations. Such autonomy exists when the management of policy making and the execution is free from political interference. Autonomy of the management is a public enterprise is necessary in order to enterprise business line and to promote initiative creativity in the path of employee. The needs of autonomy also arise to make quick decision and to take prompt action. When the decision making process of management is not dominated by the political consideration, the enterprises can take care of public economic interest, and the autonomy ensures flexibility and regimented control and political interference impair the efficient administration. So autonomy of the public enterprises can be secured through political detachment by not allowing political interference, internal management. However, the complete political detachment is neither possible nor desirable. Complete detachment of public enterprises from the government must give de facto control and cannot remain a passive observer. So, but political consideration should not be allowed to dominate the business of public enterprises. Government control should be limited to overall policy making, strategic decision. Within the policy framework laid down by the government, public enterprises should be given the freedom to operate in accordance with sound business principles and prudent commercial practices. For this become necessary to entrust the management of these enterprises to professional managers and not to the civil servants. So it's not possible to say that deviation from autonomy is the reason of failure of the PSU. Next question is, with the creation of the new regulatory agency, the wake of liberalization, overlapping justification, and the conflict become the new trend. Is there a need for the creation of super regulator and unified regulator? So this question is for the super regulator. Okay, so super regulator is needs for the liberalization. So there is very little disagreement about fact that financial sector reform undertaken in India since the 1990 have resulted in a blurring distinction between institutions. With the relaxation of balance sheet restriction, existing institutions invest across a number of markets and products. Beside a number of banks, financial institutions are gradually floating subsidiary which enter into market outside the dominant activity with a view to graduate into the universal bank. At the same time, the pace of change have been reasonably grounded and the transformation is far from complete, and it is useful to survey the change that have taken place in the recent year. Deepak Parekh Advisory Group Security Market Regulation, referring to the diffusion of regulatory responsibility, and observed that there may be a merit in formalizing the high level group on the capital market. So, by giving it a legal status is also recommended that the system needs to be devised to allow designated functionary to share specialized market info on the routine and automatic basis. The issue of choosing between the single and multiple regulator for financial system and deal in the detail for first time Indian context by Dr. Reddy. And however, Reddy also did not recommended the institution super regulator for the Indian financial system. So, he wanted to explore the feasibility of the umbrella of the regulatory legislation which create an apex regulatory authority without disturbing the existing jurisdiction. Having examined the issue of the unified structure in general, it make it may be ordered to examine whether there is sufficient ground for radical overhaul of the existing system of supervision by a separate agency, RBI, SEBI, IRDA, and create a unified structure in the recent period. No doubt the linkage between the banking, security, insurance sector gave grown, and certain bank DFI also now operating both the security and insurance sector. Banks are also participating in the capital market, and DFI have also set up their own banks. A mutual fund has also set up by the bank. Insurance company have also entered mutual fund. However, it is felt that linkage have not yet grown to the extent so as to warrant a unified structure of super regulator. While the blurring of distinction between the financial institution regulatory challenge, the balance of opinion have been in the favor of regulatory coordination and unified supervision. The argument against unified supervision is broadly run by following lines. We have not yet witnessed financial instrument and most of the products being offered by various intermediaries alone and do not combine features of bank deposit, insurance policy, investment, and direct participation. Equity market also very insignificant, and insurance companies are not yet allowed to set up banks, which would require legislative change. There are no significant regulatory overlaps And perhaps the case of cooperative bank regulation in the India is by and large institutional line and institutional essentiality reposed to single regulator. One area of the potential conflict could have been the regulations debt market, but government has already issued a notification delineating responsibilities and banking supervision historically been done RBI. Result a large volume of expertise have been built up in the area within the central bank. Besides, since or is bank based economy and banks are the conduit for carrying monetary policy, and it is necessary to keep the supervision within the central bank. Considering this fact, especially the given institution setting in India and the disadvantage of unified structure of outline above, it is felt that existing arrangement separate agency may continue to take care of some overlaps duplication. However, there is need to devise formal mechanism among three major regulators to exchange information and coordination. Question next: can the holding companies, it is on the, can the holding companies act as an institution change to add efficiency? Give the answer. Appropriate illustration: holding company is a company or firm that owns their other companies outstanding stock. The term usually refer to the company which does not produce goods and services itself, rather its purpose is to own share of other company. Holding companies allow the reduction of risk and owners and can allow the ownership and control of the number of different companies. In US, 80% of the more stock in the voting and value must be owned before tax consolidation, such as tax-free dividend can be closed. Advantage which bring efficiency from financial part of view, it is usually possible to obtain control of another company with less investorial that would be required in the merger and consolidation. Another advantage is that share stock in subsidiary company are held as asset on took book of parent company and can be used as collateral for additional debt financing. Holding company and their subsidiary are considered separate entity. For tax purpose, parent company must own 80% of the voting stock. For management point, the parent subsidiary and relationship of holding company and their subsidiary allow for decentralized management like sale in India. So this question